Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting alone in their apartment, looking at a photo of the person they love most. They are not sad exactly. They are just carrying something heavy that has no name. Something that feels like love and longing and loneliness all pressed together into a single ache that never fully goes away. If that someone is you, this video is for you. Stay until the end, because what I'm about to share might be the most important thing you hear about your relationship today. There is a particular kind of love that most people do not fully understand until they are living inside it. It is the kind of love that exists across miles and time zones and empty beds and phone screens. It is long-distance love, and it is one of the most beautiful and most brutal things a human heart can experience at the same time. Long-distance relationships are not just about missing someone. That is the surface level of it. The real experience goes much deeper. It is waking up in the morning and reaching for someone who is not there. It is having the best moment of your day, and the first person you want to tell is hours away, and somehow a phone call never quite captures what you want it to share. It is sitting in a crowded room full of people and feeling a loneliness that none of them can touch, because the one person who makes you feel less alone is on the other side of the world. The problems that come with long-distance relationships are real, and they are serious, and they deserve to be talked about honestly, rather than dismissed with the popular phrase, "If it's real love, it will survive anything." Love is necessary, but love alone is not enough. Love without communication breaks down. Love without trust collapses. Love without a plan becomes a beautiful feeling with no future.
The first major problem is time. Not just the time difference between time zones, although that is genuinely difficult, but the problem of time passing differently for two people living separate lives. You grow, they grow, and sometimes you grow in directions that quietly diverge without either of you noticing, until the distance between your inner worlds is greater than the physical distance between your bodies. The second problem is communication breakdown. In a normal relationship, you read body language, you feel energy, you share physical space that communicates things no words can. In long distance, you have a screen, and screens are wonderful tools and terrible substitutes for presence. Tone gets lost in text messages, silences feel heavier over a phone call. Misunderstandings multiply because you cannot reach over and touch someone's hand and say, "I did not mean it that way." The third problem is jealousy and insecurity. When you cannot see someone's daily life, imagination fills the gaps. And imagination, especially in moments of insecurity, does not fill those gaps kindly. Who are they spending time with? Why did they take 3 hours to respond? Why do they seem distracted lately? These questions are normal, but in long distance they can become consuming because you have so little concrete information to anchor yourself to. The fourth problem is the lack of physical intimacy. This is often the least discussed problem because it feels uncomfortable to name directly, but human beings need physical touch, not just romantically, but fundamentally, biologically. A hug, a hand held, sitting in the same room in comfortable silence. These things matter enormously, and their absence creates a kind of longing that no amount of video calling can fully address.
Long-distance relationships require an answer to the question, when does this end? When do we finally close the gap? And when that answer is unclear or keeps moving, or when two people have different timelines and different expectations about what comes next, that uncertainty quietly erodes everything else. Long-distance relationships can work. People make them work every day through extraordinary commitment and communication and patience. But they work not because love conquers all. They work because two people decide together every single day that the distance is temporary and the love is worth every difficult moment of it. Time and growing apart. Two people living separate lives grow and change independently, and without consistent shared experience, that growth can quietly pull them in different directions without either person realizing it is happening until the emotional distance becomes greater than the physical one. Communication breakdown. Long distance removes all nonverbal communication and replaces human presence with screens, which causes tone to get lost, misunderstandings to multiply, and emotional connection to weaken over time without deliberate and honest effort from both people. Jealousy and insecurity. The inability to see a partner's daily life creates an information vacuum that the imagination fills with doubt, suspicion, and fear, which, if left unaddressed, grows into controlling behavior, constant questioning, and eventual destruction of trust. Lack of physical intimacy. Human beings have a biological need for physical touch, and its prolonged absence in long-distance relationships creates a specific kind of longing and disconnection that emotional communication alone cannot fully replace. Uncertainty about the future. A long-distance relationship without a clear and shared plan for closing the gap eventually becomes an open-ended sacrifice that drains both people emotionally, because love without direction slowly transforms into love without hope. When two people enter a long-distance relationship, they make a silent assumption that is almost never spoken out loud. The assumption is that they will remain the same people they are at the moment of separation. That the person waiting on the other end of the phone will be the same person they were when they said goodbye at the airport, or the train station, or the doorstep. That love is a kind of preservation, that it freezes both people in place and keeps them safe from the changes that ordinary life quietly and constantly makes in all of us. This assumption is completely understandable. It is also completely wrong, and it is the source of some of the deepest pain that long-distance relationships produce. Not the dramatic pain of betrayal or crisis, the quiet, slow, accumulating pain of realizing that the person you have been missing for months or years is not quite the same person who is standing in front of you when the distance finally closes, and neither are you, and somehow neither of you knows exactly what to do with that. People change. This is not a flaw or a failure or a sign that something has gone wrong. It is simply the nature of being alive. Every experience you have shapes you in some way. Every challenge you navigate alone leaves a mark. Every new person you meet, every book you read, every difficult night you get through by yourself, every decision you make without your partner there to help you think it through, all of it becomes part of who you are. All of it moves you in some direction, some small or large distance away from the person you were before. In a relationship where two people share physical space, this process of change is something they experience together. They witness each other's growth in real time. They are part of each other's daily life in a way that makes the changes gradual and visible, and something that can be navigated as a unit. When your partner discovers a new passion, you are there to see the excitement in their eyes. When they go through a difficult period, you are there to feel the weight of it with them. When their opinions evolve, or their priorities shift, or their sense of who they are deepens and changes, you are woven into that process. The change happens to both of you simultaneously, even when it is primarily happening to one. In a long-distance relationship, this does not happen. The changes happen in private. They happen in the gaps between phone calls and video chats. They happen in the experiences you are not there for, in the nights you do not know about, in the conversations with other people that shape your partner's thinking in ways they may not even fully register themselves, let alone communicate to you across the distance. You are receiving a curated version of each other's lives, the highlight reel, the deliberately shared moments, the things that seem important enough to bring up. But the texture of daily life, the small and constant ways that experience reshapes a person, that gets lost in the gap. And this creates something very specific and very painful. It creates a version of your partner that exists in your mind that is increasingly different from the actual person living their actual life on the other side of the distance.
You were in a relationship with your memory of them, with the person they were when you last shared physical space, with the voice on the phone and the face on the screen, which are real but are not the whole person. And they are doing the same with you. Both of you are, in some sense, in a relationship with a ghost, a loved and cherished and desperately missed ghost, but a ghost nonetheless. This gap between the person you remember and the person they are becoming is not always dramatic. It rarely shows up all at once in some obvious, undeniable way. It shows up in small moments of slight disconnection, a conversation where you realize you do not quite understand a reference they make to something in their daily life, a disagreement where their response surprises you because it doesn't match how you know them to respond. A moment where they mention a new friend or a new interest or a new opinion, and something in you registers a quiet uncertainty, because this is not quite the person you have been carrying in your heart. These moments are easy to dismiss individually. Each one is small enough to explain away, but they accumulate, and over time the accumulation creates a subtle but real sense that you and this person are becoming slightly less fluent in each other. That the deep understanding you had, the kind of knowing that comes from shared daily life and physical presence, and all the small moments that never make it into a phone call, is slowly fading. Not gone, but fading, like a photograph left too long in sunlight. What makes this particularly difficult is that neither person is doing anything wrong. Nobody is being careless or dishonest or less committed. Both people are simply living their lives as they must, going through the experiences that come to them, growing in the directions their life is taking them. There is nobody to blame for this, which means there is also nowhere to direct the frustration and grief of it, except inward, where it tends to become confusion and self-doubt, rather than the clear-eyed understanding that this is simply what distance does to people over time.
There's also a specific kind of loneliness that comes with this particular problem that is worth naming carefully. It is the loneliness of feeling like the person who knows you best is no longer quite keeping up with who you are becoming. That you are having experiences and going through changes that are genuinely significant to you, but that feel too complicated or too difficult to fully translate across the distance. That the person on the other end of the call loves you deeply, but is loving a version of you that is slightly behind the current version. And the gap between those two versions is something you are carrying alone. Reunions in long-distance relationships are supposed to be the relief, the moment when all the distance and the longing and the phone calls collapse into physical presence and everything feels right again. And sometimes they are exactly that. But sometimes, especially after extended periods of separation, reunions carry a strange undercurrent of adjustment that nobody warned you about. The person standing in front of you is familiar and beloved, and also somehow slightly new, and you are slightly new to them, and you have to find each other again in person after months of knowing each other only through screens. That process of finding each other again is beautiful and also quietly disorienting, and it is something most couples navigate without ever giving it a name. The couples who survive long distance and come out of it with something real and strong are not the ones who somehow managed not to change during the separation. Change is not avoidable. They are the ones who stayed curious about each other, who treated the changes in their partner not as threats or betrayals, but as new chapters in a person they were committed to knowing.
Who asked questions instead of making assumptions. Who talked about the ways they were changing rather than hiding those changes out of fear that growth would be interpreted as growing apart. Who understood that growing apart is not inevitable. It is a choice that happens by default when two people stop making the active choice to grow toward each other. Long distance is a test not of whether you love each other. Love is rarely the thing that fails. It is a test of whether you are willing to do the continuous, effortful, sometimes uncomfortable work of staying genuinely known to another person across all the changes that life makes in you both. It is a test of curiosity and honesty and the willingness to say, I am not the same person I was 6 months ago, and I want you to know who I am now.
and to mean it, and to extend the same invitation to them. Because the alternative is a relationship where both people are slowly becoming strangers to each other while continuing to use the language of intimacy. Where "I love you" is true and also increasingly refers to a person who no longer fully exists. Where the relationship survives on the memory of what it was rather than the reality of what it is and what it is capable of becoming. That is not love, that is nostalgia wearing love's face. And it is one of the saddest ways a real and valuable connection can quietly end. Long-distance relationships do not fail because love runs out. They fail because people stop doing the small and consistent work of staying close across the space between them. If you are in one right now, the most important thing you can do is not count the days until the distance closes. It is to show up fully in the relationship you have today, in this form, across this distance, with this person who is changing just as you are changing. Stay curious about who they are becoming. Let them stay curious about you. Talk about the hard things before they become impossible things. And remember that every great love story is not about two perfect people finding each other. It is about two imperfect people choosing each other again and again, even when the choosing is difficult, especially when the choosing is difficult.